Why was everyone staring at her like she didn't belong? The briefing room was thick with sweat, tension, and testosterone, the kind of air that tasted like rust and resentment. Sergeant Rachel Cooper stood alone, her hands trembling around the strap of her medical kit, as 12 elite SEAL operators closed ranks around her like wolves circling a stray. The sound came first, a rip, sharp and violent. Lieutenant Brad Steele, towering at 6'4" and built like a concrete wall, had just grabbed Rachel's blouse and ripped it open from collar to chest. The torn fabric hit the floor with a soft thud that somehow echoed louder than the roar of engines or gunfire. "I don't need a babysitter," he growled. His voice was deep, angry, the kind of voice that filled a room and dared anyone to challenge it. Rachel froze. Her mind told her to step back, to defend herself, to speak, but her body stayed still. She was 5'2", a medic among killers, surrounded by men who'd bled in places most people couldn't even pronounce. Her trembling hands clutched her trauma bag tighter, a shield that couldn't stop the humiliation burning into her skin. 12 men, 1 woman, no allies. The circle tightened. One of them, a beast with a skull tattoo crawling up his neck, kicked a chair across the room. The crash echoed off the concrete walls, the metal clanging just inches from Rachel's head. "Listen up, Band-Aid girl," Steele sneered. "Tomorrow we're running patrol through Sector 7, Taliban country. You'll be dead in the first 5 minutes, and I'm not letting any of my men die trying to save a liability." He stepped closer. Rachel smelled the sour sting of tobacco and whiskey on his breath. His massive hand shot forward, grabbing her by the collar and lifting her off the ground like she weighed nothing. Her boots dangled midair. Breath caught in her throat. The room went silent. Not one of them moved. Not one of them stopped him. Rachel didn't scream, didn't beg. She looked him in the eye, those cold blue eyes that had seen combat, loss, maybe even horror, and she held his gaze. Quiet defiance. Small but unbroken. And somewhere in the silence, a truth no one yet knew hung heavy in the air. Within 24 hours, that same man would be begging her to save his life, his own blood pouring through her fingers on Afghan soil. Steele finally let go. Rachel dropped hard, her knees cracking against concrete. She winced but stayed upright, adjusted what was left of her torn uniform. No words, no tears. Then the door burst open. Colonel Sarah Winters entered, every inch of her presence slicing through the chaos. What the hell is going on here? Her eyes scanned the room, the torn fabric, Rachel's disheveled state, the ring of angry SEALs. Her voice turned cold, steel in velvet. "Lieutenant Steele, explain yourself." "Colonel," he said, straightening but not apologizing, "we need a real combat medic, not this." He gestured toward Rachel like she was a stain on his boot. "She's gonna get someone killed." Winter's jaw tightened. "Sergeant Cooper stays, that's a direct order." The SEALs muttered under their breath. One, barely out of training, all swagger and ignorance, grabbed a water bottle and hurled it against the wall beside Rachel's head. The impact sprayed water across her face like shrapnel. "This is Bull's asterisk," he spat. "We don't babysit in the teams." Winters stepped forward until the room seemed to shrink around her. "One more outburst," she said quietly, "and I'll make sure the Admiral knows his top team can't follow simple orders. Dismissed." The SEALs filed out, brushing past Rachel one by one, each shoulder check deliberate, each step dripping with contempt. Steele was the last to leave. He leaned down, lips inches from her ear. "Pray tomorrow goes smooth," he whispered. "Because if one of my boys gets hurt because of you, I'll finish what I started." Then he walked out. Rachel stayed still until the door shut behind them. Her breath came in slow, controlled drags. The taste of humiliation sat bitter in her mouth. Winter's expression softened. "I know what they did was wrong," she said quietly, "but I need you on this mission. Can you handle it?" Rachel nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "Then clean up," Briefing at 600. When the colonel left, Rachel crouched to pick up the torn fabric from the floor. Her fingers didn't shake anymore. She folded it neatly as if giving order to chaos. She'd been through worse, much worse. The memories came unbidden. Another base, another circle of dismissive voices. Send a real medic, not some girl playing soldier. That had been 3 years ago, a mission that never officially happened, in a place that didn't exist. She pushed the memory down, sealed it away. Now wasn't the time for ghosts. The medical supply room was her sanctuary. Metal counters, sterile lights, silence. Rachel unpacked her kit like a ritual, checking every piece, every clamp, every ampule. Hemostatic agents for arterial bleeding. Emergency surgical tools arranged not by protocol but by instinct. Synthetic blood vials, expensive, rare, and sometimes the only thing between life and a flag-draped coffin. Each tool was familiar. Each one had saved someone once. That's not standard issue, a voice said behind her. She turned. Petty Officer Marcus Williams, the team's senior corpsman, leaned against the doorway. Unlike the others, his eyes weren't cruel, just curious. Rachel kept her tone professional. Some of it is. Williams stepped closer, watching her movements, the efficient, practiced way she checked her gear. He saw things the others hadn't. The unorthodox arrangement, the precise way she twisted each tourniquet, the vial of ketamine hidden among the morphine. Then his gaze caught something else, a scar on her forearm, thin and deliberate. Not shrapnel, not an accident, a blade. That's not from an IED, he said quietly. Too clean, looks like a K-bar. Rachel's sleeve fell back down. Training accident. The lie rolled easily off her tongue. Williams didn't press. He just nodded, filing away the question. You're good, he said finally. Really good. She said nothing. But as he left, his parting words lingered. Guess we'll see what happens when the bullets start flying. The range that afternoon smelled of cordite and arrogance. Steele and his men stood in a row, weapons gleaming under the Afghan sun. Rachel waited her turn as they laughed and showed off. Watch and learn, Band-Aid girl, Steele called, sending a burst of rounds downrange. Tight grouping, perfect center mass. The others followed, clean, controlled, confident. Then Rachel stepped forward. One of the younger SEALs, Jenkins, kicked her ammo-can over, scattering rounds across the concrete. Oops, he smirked. The range master, a grizzled army sergeant too old for this kind of macho nonsense, just sighed. Rachel said nothing. She knelt, collected each round, loaded her rifle slowly. The metal felt right in her hands, like a memory. When she shouldered the weapon, something in her posture shifted, small but unmistakable. The chatter behind her died. She exhaled, the world narrowed. 5 shots, 5 seconds. The range master reeled the target in. 5 holes, one on top of another, clean through the head. No words, just silence. Jenkins muttered, lucky shots. But Steele wasn't fooled. He saw the way she'd absorbed the rifle's recoil, her breathing discipline, her grip, too good for just a medic. Rachel cleared the weapon, stepped back, expression unreadable. No gloating, no satisfaction, just quiet competence. And for the first time, doubt began to crack through their contempt. That evening the mess hall was a chorus of metal trays and low voices. Rachel ate alone in the corner. The SEALs sat together, loud and laughing, their glances cutting toward her like knives. Then a bottle of hot sauce spilled across her tray. Spice it up, sweetheart, one of them said, laughing. She wiped it off silently. Another figure sat across from her, Corporal Lisa Park, one of the few other women on base. She slid Rachel a napkin. They're assholes, she said quietly. What they're doing isn't right. I've had worse, Rachel murmured. Still doesn't make it right, Lisa said. She hesitated, then leaned closer. Look, I probably shouldn't say this, but I've heard things about you. Good things. Rachel froze. You've got the wrong person. Lisa shook her head. Building 3, basement. If you ever need ammunition against them, not the shooting kind, go there. Before Rachel could respond, Lisa stood abruptly and walked away. Across the hall, Master Chief Rodriguez was watching, calm, unreadable, calculating. Good, let him wonder. Tomorrow, all their questions would have answers. One way or another. The night was cold when Rachel finished repacking her med kit, the advanced one no one knew about. Her movements were slow, methodical, almost prayerful. The storm was coming, she could feel it. Somewhere deep down, beneath the fear and anger, something old was stirring, instincts honed in secret places, under names erased from history. Tomorrow the bullets would fly, and the woman they called Band-Aid Girl would show them who she really was. Why did the valley feel wrong? That was Rachel's first thought as she studied the map glowing under the harsh light of the briefing room. The others were laughing, boasting, talking about kill zones and extraction points, but she was watching the terrain, the choke points, the ridgelines, the way the valley seemed to narrow like a throat. 5:45 hours. She arrived early, but the SEALs were already gathered, geared up and confident, their war paint streaked across hardened faces. She could feel their eyes on her as she slipped quietly into the back row, her uniform crisp, her gear perfectly aligned. "Well, look who showed up," Steele said, voice cutting through the chatter. "Thought you might have developed a sudden case of nerves." Laughter rippled through the room. Rachel didn't respond. She focused on the screen where Colonel Winters was outlining the mission. A presence patrol, simple on paper. Sector 7, Tangi Valley. Show the flag, deter Taliban movement, maintain rapport with locals. But the route bothered her. Narrow roads, limited exits, elevated positions on both sides, textbook ambush country. Winter's tone was calm, professional. "You'll roll out in 4 Humvees, Red 1 through Red 4. Maintain comms discipline. Expect light contact, nothing more." Rachel's eyes lingered on a section of the map. Grid 38 Romeo, Quebec, Mike. Something about it sparked memory, a ghost flicker of an operation that had never officially happened. She raised her hand. "Ma'am," she began quietly, "this route takes us through a natural choke point, shouldn't we?" Steele laughed loud and sharp. "The medic wants to play tactician now." More laughter followed. Rachel lowered her hand, her face calm, but inside her pulse thudded like distant artillery. She wasn't wrong. She never was about these things. The sun hadn't fully risen when the convoy rolled out, 4 up-armored Humvees, engines rumbling, turrets scanning. The morning air smelled of dust and diesel. Rachel sat in the last vehicle, tail end Charlie, beside Jenkins and 2 others who'd spent the last day making her life hell. "Perfect." Jenkins smirked, tapping the dash. "Try not to puke when the shooting starts, princess. Blood's a lot different outside your textbooks." Rachel ignored him, running her gear checks with mechanical calm. Her hands brushed something small tucked in her pack, a folded note. Lisa's handwriting. "Building 3, basement, if you need proof." Proof of what? The thought burned in the back of her mind, but there was no time for riddles. The Humvee jolted as it hit a rut. Outside, the village blurred past mud walls, wary faces. Women pulled their children inside. Men watched from doorways, still as statues. Rachel had learned long ago that silence meant danger. The radio crackled. Red 1 to all red elements, entering Sector 7. The Tangi Valley opened before them, a dry riverbed flanked by cliffs, high ground perfect for hidden rifles. Rachel's instincts screamed. She keyed her mic. "Red 4 to Red 1, recommend we." "Red 4, maintain radio discipline," Steele's voice snapped back. "Save the chatter for after we're home." Rachel clenched her jaw. "Copy, Red 1." A second later, Jenkins chuckled. LT, got your number, Doc. Maybe after this you can transfer to supply. Then the world exploded. The IED hit the second Humvee. The blast was like a god's fist slamming into the earth, a concussive wave that lifted the 20-ton vehicle off the ground and flipped it sideways. Fire bloomed across the valley. Rachel's world went white. Then sound rushed back, screams, gunfire, the staccato crack of AKs raining from both ridges. Contact, 360. Her body moved before her mind caught up. She grabbed her med kit and was out the door, sprinting through chaos, bullets snapping past like angry wasps. She ducked behind a smoking tire, scanned the scene. The second Humvee was on its side, flames licking its undercarriage. Inside, movement, someone alive. No time to think. Rachel ran. The heat seared her face as she dove through the twisted door frame. One man was screaming, trapped, legs pinned. Another lay motionless, his uniform smoldering. "Hold on," she shouted. The flames roared back. She reached the first soldier, Peterson, and dragged him out, ignoring the burning metal that tore her palms. His screams followed her into the open air. Then she went back. The second man, Kowalski, wasn't moving. She wrapped her arms under his shoulders and pulled, gritting her teeth as the fire bit her sleeves. The Humvee exploded behind her, the shockwave flinging her forward. She covered both men with her body as shrapnel rained down. Her lungs burned, ears rang, but they were alive. That was enough. She looked up. The whole valley was alive with muzzle flashes. The SEALs were pinned, firing in tight bursts, discipline holding against the chaos. RPG trails cut through the smoke. Another detonation slammed into the lead vehicle. This wasn't random contact. This was a planned ambush, perfect positioning, perfect timing. Rachel crawled toward the cries of another wounded man. Then she heard it, the voice she'd least expected. "Medic!" Her heart froze steel. She followed the sound past a destroyed truck, over burning debris until she saw him. He was half out of his vehicle, slumped in the dust. Blood soaked his uniform. His abdomen was torn open, organs spilling through shredded fabric. A wound that kills fast. He looked at her, eyes wild with terror. "Help me," he gasped, "please." The same man who'd ripped her uniform hours ago. Rachel didn't hesitate. Her hands were already moving, slicing away fabric, assessing damage. The wound was catastrophic. No field medic could fix this. But Rachel Cooper wasn't just a medic. "Doc Williams, this is Red 4, she called into her radio. "Multiple category alpha casualties. I've got steel down, massive abdominal trauma." Williams' voice crackled through static. "He needs a surgeon, Cooper, you can't." The transmission cut off as another explosion rocked the ground. Rachel exhaled slowly. The battlefield around her vanished. There was only the patient, the blood, the tools. She worked fast, faster than training should allow. From her pack came items the others didn't even know existed: arterial clamps, synthetic blood, ketamine. She pushed a measured dose into Steele's vein, just enough to dull the pain but keep him conscious. "Listen to me," she said, voice steady. "You're going to feel everything, but you're going to live. You hear me? You will live." Steele nodded weakly, tears cutting through the dirt on his face. Rachel went to work, packing the wound, clamping bleeders, using surgical thread to stitch his intestines back into place, a procedure that shouldn't have been possible under fire. Her hands didn't tremble. They never did. Bullets chewed the dirt inches from her knees. She didn't flinch. Then, over the gunfire, her radio hissed again. "Red 4, this is Firehawk 6, troops in contact. Who the hell is calling in our grid?" Rachel froze. She hadn't realized she'd switched frequencies, old muscle memory guiding her fingers. Call signs that weren't supposed to exist. "Firehawk 6, this is Ghost 7-1, she said before she could stop herself. "Danger close, grid 38 Romeo Quebec Mike. Friendlies marked by IR strobes. Time on target now." A pause, then, "Ghost 7-1, authenticate." Rachel's lips moved on their own. "Echo Charlie." Silence, then, "Rounds inbound, 30 seconds." She slammed her comm back to team frequency. "All red elements take cover. Artillery inbound, danger close." Steele's voice cracked. "What did you just—" Then the world became thunder. Artillery rounds screamed down the valley, walking precisely up the ridgelines. Each detonation was surgical, deadly to the enemy, sparing the convoy. The ground trembled. The sky turned to dust and fire. Rachel threw herself over Steele's body as shrapnel ripped through the air. When the echoes faded, the ridges were silent. No return fire, no movement. The ambush was broken. For a long moment, only breathing and static filled the air. Then the radio crackled again. "Ghost 7-1, Firehawk 6, adjust complete, awaiting further tasking." Rachel stared at her radio. That call sign, that name, hadn't been spoken in 3 years. Not since the mission that never happened. Not since she died. She switched frequencies. "Negative Firehawk, mission complete, disregard further contact." The line went dead. She turned back to Steele, whose face was pale, lips trembling. "You're gonna live," she told him again. He nodded faintly. "What the hell are you?" Rachel didn't answer. Because she didn't have an answer she could give. By the time reinforcements arrived, the valley was a wasteland of smoke and silence. The SEALs moved like ghosts through the wreckage, gathering the wounded, reloading, scanning for threats that were already dead. Steele lay under Rachel's jacket, his breathing shallow but steady. The bleeding had stopped. The repair would hold long enough to get him to a surgical team. "Medic," Williams called from down the line. "We've got more incoming wounded." Rachel looked at Steele one last time. "Stay awake," she said. "Don't make me save you twice." Then she ran. The gunfire that still crackled was distant now, controlled, fading. But in her earpiece, amid the chaos, a voice she hadn't heard in years whispered through the static. "Ghost 7-1, you're not supposed to exist." Rachel froze. Then the signal died. As the medevac birds roared overhead, Rachel knelt beside another casualty, hands moving on instinct, saving one more life in the dust and smoke. Her body was shaking now, the adrenaline fading, the realization settling in. She had broken her cover. She had used those call signs. And someone out there had heard her. Someone who remembered the name Ghost 71. But for now, she focused on the only thing that mattered, the living. The rest could wait. The ghosts could wait. Because today, she'd done her job. And maybe, just maybe, the men who'd mocked her would finally understand what kind of warrior she really was. What happens after the shooting stops? That's the part no one tells you about. The silence that follows, the way it presses on your chest heavier than any wound. Rachel sat inside the medevac Black Hawk, knees slick with blood that wasn't all someone else. The rotors thundered above, drowning every thought except one. Steele was alive. He shouldn't have been. By every rule of battlefield medicine, by every protocol drilled into her for years, the lieutenant should have bled out in the dirt. But he hadn't, because Rachel Cooper didn't play by rules written for ordinary medics. Across from her, Steele lay pale beneath the harsh red cabin light, IVs taped to his arms, bandages rising and falling with each breath. His hand twitched once, maybe reaching for her, maybe just reflex. Jenkins sat beside him, eyes hollow. The same man who dumped hot sauce on her food now stared at her like she was something sacred and terrifying. "You called in fire support," he shouted over the engines. "But those codes, those weren't ours, were they?" Rachel met his gaze, Keep pressure on the wound. He did, no more questions. The helicopter banked east. Through the open ramp the Tangi Valley burned, a scar across the Afghan desert. At Fob Chapman chaos reigned. Medical teams swarmed the pad, stretchers waiting. Rachel moved with them, shouting vitals, triaging wounds, refusing to slow down even as pain flared through her own burned arms. Lieutenant Steele, Category Alpha, massive abdominal repair completed in field, she reported to the receiving surgeon. Her voice was calm, clinical, like she was describing someone else's miracle. The surgeon stared at her, incredulous. You did a bowel repair under fire. Rachel just nodded. He'll need a full X-lap. The sutures will hold. The man shook his head. That's not combat medicine, that's art. But she was already moving to the next casualty. Hours blurred. When the last patient was stabilized, Rachel finally noticed her own blood, thin cuts along her hands, a burn across her neck. She ignored them. The medics who tried to help her she waved off with a quiet, others first. By the time she made it outside, the sky had gone from dusk to black. Floodlights bathed the flight line in sterile white. Colonel Winters was waiting. Sergeant Cooper with me. Her tone left no room for argument. Inside the colonel's office, the air felt heavy. One lamp, one file on the desk, and a silence sharp enough to cut. I've been reviewing radio logs, Winters began, eyes never leaving Rachel's face. Call signs that shouldn't exist, codes that were decommissioned 3 years ago. She slid the file across the desk. And an AC-130 crew who'd like to know who directed their fire with perfect precision. Rachel said nothing. Winters studied her. 12 SEALs owe their lives to a medic they tried to break. They're telling everyone about surgical procedures and combat calls that go far beyond your training. Another pause, then softly, so I started digging. She opened the file. The paper inside bore a classification stamp Rachel hadn't seen since the day she was declared dead. Top secret/ghost program. Winters' voice lowered. Imagine my surprise when I found that Ghost 71 was officially listed KIA. Rachel's throat tightened. She forced the words out. I was told my past was buried, that I could start over. It was, Winters said, until today. She closed the folder gently. The question is what we do about it. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of distant helicopters filled the silence like a heartbeat. Finally, the colonel sighed. For now, nothing. The report will reflect exemplary performance under fire. The irregularities will be attributed to chaos in combat. She leaned forward. But Rachel, the men know. Maybe not the details, but they know you're not what you appear to be. That secret's out. Rachel nodded once. Understood, ma'am. Good, get some rest. That's an order. As Rachel reached the door, Winters added quietly, and Sergeant, Building 3's basement. Whatever's there, tread carefully. Some truths don't stay buried. Rachel turned, startled. How did you? But Winters was already staring back down at the folder. Conversation over. Outside, the night air hit like ice. The base looked different now, quieter, slower, the kind of calm that follows trauma. Word of the ambush had already spread. She could feel it in the stares that followed her down the corridor. Where yesterday there had been mockery, now there was something else. Awe, fear, respect. Every conversation stopped as she passed. Someone murmured, "That's her, the medic who saved Steele." She didn't meet their eyes. She didn't want their reverence. All she wanted was sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. 300 hours. Rachel sat on her bunk, boots still on, staring at her hands. The blood was gone, scrubbed clean, but she could still feel it, sticky, warm, alive. Each breath brought back flashes. The flames, the screams, the sound of Steele's voice breaking on "Help me." A knock broke the silence. She opened the door to find Master Chief Rodriguez standing there, arm in a sling, face unreadable in the dim light. Easy, he said, raising his good hand. Didn't mean to startle you. Rachel relaxed a fraction. What are you doing here? Couldn't sleep, he said simply. Figured you couldn't either. He stepped inside, studying her like he was reading a classified report. I knew a ghost once, he said finally. Different number. Ramadi, 6. Man could call danger close fire while dragging 2 Marines to safety. Coolest head under fire I ever saw. He looked at her. They told us he died in a training accident 3 years ago. Whole ghost unit did. Funny thing, though, the accident happened in a place that doesn't exist. Rachel's heartbeat quickened. She kept her voice steady. Training accidents happen. Yeah, Rodriguez said, they do, but bodies don't vanish. Empty coffins, folded flags, that's different. Silence. Finally he sighed. Look, I don't need the details, probably don't have clearance anyway. All I know is Steele's alive because of you. Peterson, Kowalski, half the team, they're breathing because you were there. That's enough for me. He turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. That basement Lisa mentioned, be careful. Some answers bite back. Then he was gone, leaving Rachel alone again with ghosts that refused to rest. She didn't remember falling asleep, only waking to another knock. The clock read 600. When she opened the door this time, Jenkins stood there. He looked smaller somehow, eyes sunken, hands twitching at his sides. Sergeant Cooper, Rachel, he said awkwardly, can I come in? She hesitated, then stepped aside. He stood in silence for a long moment, searching for words. Christ, I don't know how to say this. I was an ass. We all were. I threw your gear, mocked you, treated you like garbage, and then you, his voice cracked. You saved us. Rachel said softly, it's my job. He shook his head. No, your job was to patch us up. What you did, calling in artillery, that surgery, the sniper shot, you went beyond anything I've ever seen. Why? After everything we did to you, why risk it? She looked at him, tired eyes meeting his. Because you were my team. The second I was assigned, your lives became my responsibility. What you thought of me didn't matter. Duty isn't about who deserves saving. Jenkins swallowed hard. Steele's awake. First thing he did was ask if you were okay. He's putting you in for a silver star. Rodriguez wants you permanent on the team. Rachel's voice was quiet, edged with exhaustion. I don't want medals. I just want to do my job without proving myself every damn day. He nodded, shame flickering across his face. You've earned that. Nobody's ever gonna question you again. At the door, he hesitated. He's asking for you, Steele. You should go see him. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and second chances. Steele lay propped against white pillows, machines humming beside him. His face was pale, but his eyes, those cold blue eyes, looked different now. When he saw her, he managed a weak grin. They said I died twice on the table. Guess I'm too stubborn. Rachel pulled up a chair. That makes 2 of us. He chuckled, then winced. I owe you more than my life. I owe you an apology. You don't have to. Yeah, I do. His voice cracked. I was wrong about you, about everything. You're more soldier than I'll ever be. Rachel looked down at her hands. We all have our ghosts, Lieutenant. The trick is learning to live with them. He nodded slowly, emotion glinting in his eyes. Ghost 71, he whispered. That's what they called you, right? Her heart stilled. Where'd you hear that? Radio chatter, he said faintly. During the fight, I know what that unit was. My uncle served with special operations. Said losing the ghosts was like cutting off our own sword hand. He reached for her hand. I'm honored to have served with you, even if I didn't realize it until too late. Rachel squeezed his fingers gently. Take care of your team. Real strength isn't noise or size. It's bleeding for someone else, even when they don't deserve it. She stood. He didn't try to stop her. Outside, dawn was breaking, pale light spilling across the mountains. The base was waking, but Rachel felt the opposite, like the world was holding its breath again. She reached into her pocket. Lisa's note crinkled between her fingers. Building 3, basement, proof. Rodriguez's warning echoed in her head, but curiosity was stronger than fear. Maybe it was time to stop running from ghosts. Building 3 was a relic, Soviet concrete, half abandoned, used for storage. The door to the basement was unlocked. Rachel descended slowly, flashlight cutting through the dark. Dust motes floated like ash. The deeper she went, the colder it became. At the bottom, she stopped. The walls were covered in photographs, dozens of them. Operators in shadow, faces obscured, documents pinned beneath red string. And in the corner, a voice said quietly, "I knew you'd come." Rachel turned. Lisa Park stepped out of the darkness, posture straighter now, confidence sharp. Not the nervous corporal from the mess hall, someone else entirely. "Sorry about the act," Lisa said. "Had to be sure you were really who they said you were." She gestured at the photographs. "I've been collecting these for 2 years. Every time a mystery operator shows up in reports, every impossible rescue, every perfect shot. The ghosts aren't dead, are they?" Rachel said nothing. Her eyes traced one photo, an operation in Helmand, a figure in shadow with a stance she recognized. Lisa's voice softened. "My brother was Ghost 9. They said he died in a training accident. I've been searching ever since." Rachel finally spoke, voice barely a whisper. "We were betrayed, the intel was false, the mission a trap." Her hand trembled as she touched the photo. 8 killed, the rest forced underground. We were told to disappear or die for real. Lisa nodded grimly. "Then whoever sold you out is still out there." A sound broke the silence, boots on stairs, multiple sets moving in sync. Rachel's instincts flared. She shoved Lisa behind a cabinet, drawing her sidearm. Old reflexes came roaring back. The first figure appeared at the base of the stairs. "Easy, Ghost 71, said a familiar voice. Doc Williams, followed by Rodriguez and 3 others. Weapons lowered, expressions grave. "Figured we'd find you here," Williams said. "Jenkins saw you heading this way." Rachel exhaled, but only slightly. "This is private." "Not anymore," Rodriguez said. "Whatever's going on, you're not alone in it." Before she could answer, another voice drifted down the stairs, calm, cold, commanding. "What's going on?" it said. "Is that a classified operation just got very unclassified." They turned. A man in civilian clothes stepped into the light, silver hair, posture like granite. His presence carried rank even without insignia. Rachel froze. General Thomas Morrison, Deputy Director of Special Operations Command, the man who had signed off on Operation Twilight Hammer. The mission that killed the ghosts. "Sergeant Cooper," he said, voice smooth as a knife's edge. "Or should I say, Ghost 71, you've been a hard woman to find. How do you face the man who buried you alive?" Rachel didn't move. The air in the basement thickened as General Thomas Morrison descended the stairs, his steps unhurried, confident, like someone walking into a meeting he'd been planning for years. "Stand down, everyone," he said calmly. "If I wanted you dead, you'd never have heard me coming." Williams and Rodriguez exchanged wary glances but lowered their weapons. Rachel didn't. Her sidearm stayed level, her stance tight. "You've got 5 seconds to explain why you're here," she said quietly. Morrison smiled, the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. Still sharp, I'd expect nothing less from Ghost 71. Her jaw tightened. "That name's supposed to be buried." "It was," Morrison said. "But then you resurrected it on an open frequency, no less. Quite the fireworks show you called in, Sergeant. Even the Air Force boys are still talking about it." Rodriguez frowned. "You're telling me that ambush wasn't random?" Morrison's gaze slid to him. "Nothing in this country ever is." He stepped closer to the wall of photographs, brushing a finger over the pinned images. "You've been busy down here, haven't you, Corporal Park?" Lisa stiffened. My brother died in Twilight Hammer. I have a right to know why. Of course you do, Morrison said softly. That's why I'm here. Rachel's grip on her weapon didn't relax. You're the one who signed the orders, General. You sent us into that compound. You killed us. Morrison turned to her. No, Sergeant, I sent you into the compound. Someone else killed you. The words hung in the cold air. The general set his tablet on the table. With a tap, satellite footage filled the screen, grainy thermal images, a convoy moving through desert night, figures outlined in white. This is your patrol from yesterday, he said. You were ambushed by over 30 Taliban fighters. Heavy weapons, perfect positioning, flawless timing. He looked up. You think that was coincidence? Rachel's heart sank. You're saying someone tipped them off. Morrison nodded. The same someone who sold out Ghost Unit 3 years ago. Lisa stepped forward, anger and grief warring in her face. You knew we were betrayed. We suspected, Morrison replied. But we couldn't prove it. Every lead died in the dark. Every witness disappeared. So we designed a trap, Operation Requiem. He pointed at Rachel. You were the bait. The room erupted. Williams cursed under his breath. Rodriguez's voice was low, dangerous. You used her. Morrison didn't flinch. I used a soldier who volunteered for hazardous duty. The enemy wanted proof that Ghost 71 was still alive. Yesterday they got it. Now they'll move to finish the job, and when they do, we'll be waiting. Rachel's hand trembled on the grip of her pistol. You turned my life into a honeypot operation. I turned your death into an advantage, Morrison corrected. You were buried for a reason, Sergeant, but the people who orchestrated Twilight Hammer, they're still out there. Selling intel, compromising missions, killing our own. We can't root them out from the top down. We need to draw them into the open. Rodriguez crossed his arms. So what? You just drop this on us and walk away. You think we're gonna play along after what you did? Morrison's voice stayed calm. You already have Master Chief. The moment you found her, the moment you helped her survive that ambush, you became part of this. Rachel holstered her weapon slowly. The fury inside her was quiet now, cold and precise. Why me? Because you were the best, Morrison said simply. The Ghosts were built to operate off-grid, small teams, deep cover, zero oversight. We designed you for impossible situations. When the program went dark, we needed someone to survive. Someone the enemy wouldn't forget. Lisa's voice cut through the silence. You're admitting you left them there. My brother, the others. Morrison's expression didn't change, but a shadow crossed his face. I didn't have a choice. Rachel's voice hardened. There's always a choice. He looked at her for a long time. Maybe, but choices have consequences. You of all people should know that. For a second the general seemed almost human, tired, burdened. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold efficiency of command. The Ghosts are being reactivated, he said. Off the books. No uniforms, no chain of command, no official acknowledgement. If you want the truth, if you want justice, you'll have to earn it in the shadows. Rodriguez gave a dry laugh. And if we say no? Morrison shrugged. Then you go back to your lives, pretend this never happened, but the people hunting ghosts won't pretend. They'll come for you too. Silence filled the basement. Only the hum of the ventilation and the distant chop of helicopter blades broke it. Rachel looked at the men who had once mocked her, doubted her, humiliated her. Now they stood waiting for her decision. The medic, the outcast, the ghost. She took a breath. If I say yes, what happens next? Morrison smiled faintly. Then you stop running and we start hunting. The following hours blurred into motion. Orders whispered, files transferred, gear requisitioned under false manifests. At 400, the group assembled on the flight line under a slate-gray sky. The world felt colder, sharper. Rachel stood apart from the others, staring east where the first hints of dawn glowed behind the mountains. Williams joined her, helmet tucked under one arm. You really trust him? No, she said, but I trust the mission. He nodded. That's good enough for me. Rodriguez approached next, his usual stoic calm tinged with something new, respect. You ever think you'd end up leading a team of SEALs? Rachel smiled faintly. Not in this lifetime. He chuckled. Guess it's a good thing you've had more than one. Inside the transport hangar, Morrison oversaw final preparations. A sleek black helicopter, no markings, no ID, waited on the tarmac. Your new call signs are in here, he said, handing Rachel a sealed envelope. New identities, new mission parameters. Once you lift off, Ghost Protocol is active. Rachel glanced at Lisa, who stood silently at her side, a pistol on her hip and her brother's dog tags hanging around her neck. You're coming too. Lisa nodded. You'll need someone who knows how to follow the money. Whoever betrayed you didn't just sell intel, they built an empire on it. Rachel studied her for a moment. You trained for this. Lisa smirked. I was never just a clerk. Morrison's radio crackled. Transport ready for launch. He turned back to Rachel. You should know something before you go. The ambush wasn't just about confirming your existence. They were testing response time, ours and yours, which means whoever's behind this knows our playbook. Rachel frowned. You're saying it's someone inside. I'm saying the enemy wears our uniform, Morrison said. And until we know who, trust no one. He paused, studying her face. You were always the heart of that unit, Ghost 71. You just forgot how strong your heart really was. She held his gaze. You talk like this is redemption. Not redemption, he said quietly. Correction. They lifted off before dawn, the rotors cutting through thin mountain air. Below them, Fob Chapman shrank to a cluster of lights, then to nothing. Rachel sat between Rodriguez and Williams, her pack at her feet, the sealed envelope in her lap. The others were quiet, each lost in thought. Rodriguez broke the silence first. You ever think about what happens when this is done, when we find whoever sold you out? Rachel's eyes stayed on the horizon, every day. And then I stop running, for real this time. Williams chuckled under his breath. You realize we're following a medic into a ghost hunt, right? Never thought I'd see the day. You're not following a medic, Rodriguez said softly. You're following a soldier. An hour later, they landed at a remote airstrip carved into the mountainside, an unmarked facility that wasn't on any official map. The hangar door slid open to reveal a small operations center already humming with encrypted feeds. Screens flickered with satellite imagery, files scrolled with redacted text. Lisa moved toward one of the terminals, her fingers flying over the keyboard. These are financial traces, shell companies tied to logistics contracts during Twilight Hammer. One of them routes through Dubai, another through Istanbul, all with the same handler ID. Rachel leaned in. Whose ID? Lisa hesitated. It's blacked out, higher than field command, someone with authority over special operations funding. Morrison appeared behind them, watching. Good, you're starting to see the web. She turned to him. You already knew this, didn't you? He gave a thin smile. I needed confirmation, now we can act. Rachel stepped closer. You're playing us general again. Maybe, he said. But if I am, ask yourself, are you getting closer to the truth or not? For a moment they locked eyes. Two soldiers, both built for war, both carrying ghosts. Finally, Rachel looked away. What's the next move? Morrison tapped the tablet. A new image filled the screen, an aerial photo of a fortified compound in the desert. Your next target, the people inside finance the ambush. They'll have answers. Lisa zoomed in, frowning. That's a private contractor site, American personnel. Morrison's expression hardened. The enemy doesn't always wear a foreign flag. That night Rachel couldn't sleep. She sat alone beside the helipad, moonlight washing the sand in silver. The mountains loomed like dark sentinels. Steele's face haunted her, the fear, the apology, the gratitude. The men she'd saved were alive because she'd broken the one rule that had kept her safe: stay dead. Now, because of that choice, everything was unraveling. Footsteps approached. Rodriguez again. He handed her a canteen. "You okay?" "Define okay," she said with a tired smile. He nodded toward the compound outline still glowing on the nearby tablet. "You think Morrison telling the truth?" Rachel took a slow sip. "Truth doesn't matter, only what we do with it." He smiled faintly. "You know, for someone who hates leadership, you're starting to sound like one." She looked at him, eyes distant. "I don't lead, I carry the wounded." "Yeah," he said softly, "and sometimes that's what leadership looks like." The next morning, they suited up. No insignia, no names, just black fatigues and silence. As Rachel secured her vest, she felt the weight of something in her pocket, a folded note, one she hadn't put there. She unfolded it slowly. The ambush was just the beginning. Trust no one. G17. Her blood went cold. Ghost 17, one of the original unit, declared dead. She looked up at the rising sun, at the faint gleam of rotors spinning in the distance. Ghost 17 was alive. And watching. Why did betrayal always feel colder than fear? That was the thought running through Rachel's mind as the rotor wash tore across the sand, kicking up ghostly spirals in the dawn light. The team moved fast, shadows against a gold horizon, weapons tight, eyes sharper than ever. They'd been given a name, a location, and an order: infiltrate, retrieve, extract. Simple words hiding impossible things. But nothing felt simple anymore. Rodriguez adjusted his comms, muttering, "Private contractor base, American personnel. Feels like we're walking into our own reflection." Rachel checked her weapon, her tone calm but tight. "Reflections can lie." Beside her, Lisa's fingers flew across her handheld terminal, decrypting building schematics. "We've got 3 structures: main office, logistics warehouse, and a sub-level bunker. Guess which one's off the grid?" Rachel smiled faintly. "The one we start with." The helicopter peeled off into the rising light, leaving them alone in the desert silence. The compound was slick and modern, rows of concrete walls, polished glass, armed guards with American patches and blank faces. To the world, this was a logistics hub. To anyone who looked closer, it was something else entirely. Rachel's team breached the perimeter at 3:40 hours. No alarms, no chatter, just the soft rhythm of boots over gravel and the occasional hum of distant generators. They moved with surgical precision, communicating only with gestures. Inside, the halls were sterile, white light, clean air, no signs of life except the faint echo of their footsteps. Too clean, too perfect. Williams whispered, "This doesn't feel right." Rachel nodded once, eyes open. They reached a locked steel door at the end of a corridor. Lisa plugged in her decryption drive. "Give me 30 seconds. "Take 20, Rachel murmured. The lock clicked. The door opened. And the room beyond looked nothing like a contractor's office. It was a server vault. Rows upon rows of black towers hummed under cold blue light, their cables snaking like veins into the walls. Dozens of monitors displayed satellite feeds, intercepted comms, facial recognition grids. Rodriguez's jaw tightened. "This isn't logistics, this is surveillance." Lisa moved to the nearest terminal, her hands moving fast. "Encrypted through military satellites. Whoever runs this has clearance at Joint Command level." Rachel's gaze landed on one feed, grainy live footage of Fob Chapman. Cameras on the flight line, the med bay, even the colonel's office. Her stomach turned. "They're watching us." "Not just you," Lisa whispered. "They're watching everyone." Then a sound cut through the hum, boots on tile. Rachel froze, signaling the others to cover. The team slipped into shadows, weapons raised. A door opened. Two men entered, both in civilian clothes but moving like soldiers. One carried a tablet, the other a suppressed pistol at his hip. They stopped by the central console. "Requiem assets confirmed," the first man said. "Telemetry from Tangi Valley consistent with ghost presence. Morrison, tracking them north." Rachel's pulse spiked. Morrison. The second man nodded. "Phase 2's ready. As soon as Ghost 71 reaches Istanbul, we close the loop." Lisa's eyes widened. Rachel mouthed, "Istanbul." The man with the pistol continued, "We'll let her think she's leading the hunt. By the time she realizes what this is really about, she'll be isolated. Command still wants her alive. For now, they need what's left in her head." Rachel's jaw clenched, her trigger finger twitched. Rodriguez leaned close. "Orders." "Wait," she whispered. But Lisa stepped forward too soon. The corner of her boot scraped metal. The guard spun. "Contact." The room erupted. Gunfire shattered the sterile silence. Bullets ricocheted off servers, sparks raining like fireflies. Rachel dropped to cover, returning fire with 2 precise bursts, both men down before they could call for help. Smoke curled through the air. Alarms began to wail, red lights flashing overhead. "Move," Rachel shouted. "Grab the drives." Lisa yanked the encrypted data cores from their slots, shoving them into her pack. Rodriguez kicked the bodies aside and sealed the door behind them, buying precious seconds. "We're blown." Williams keyed the comm. "Bird, we need extraction now." Static, then nothing. Rachel's blood ran cold. "They're jamming us." Lisa tapped her wrist console. "They've locked external comms, but I can piggyback on their internal grid. Give me a minute." "You've got 30 seconds, Rachel said. They sprinted through the corridor, alarms blaring like sirens of judgment. Outside, guards swarmed the compound. Trucks roared to life, lights slicing through the dawn haze. Rachel's team ducked behind a concrete barrier, returning fire in tight, disciplined bursts. Williams shouted, "They're using American rifles." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "They are Americans." Rodriguez growled, "Then who the hell are we fighting?" Lisa's voice cut through the chaos. "Got it. I'm inside their system, sending you something." Rachel's visor flashed with incoming data, a file labeled Project Solstice. She opened it. Lines of text scrolled across her HUD, transaction records, encrypted orders, authorization signatures. One name repeated over and over. Morrison T.J. Rachel froze. Rodriguez saw her expression. "What is it?" She swallowed hard. "It's him, Morrison. He's the one funding this." The realization hit like a second explosion. The trap, the ambush, the reactivation, every move had been orchestrated by the same man who claimed to be saving them. "Son of a bitch," Williams hissed. "He played all of us." Rachel's voice was cold steel. "Not for long." They reached the outer gate under heavy fire. Rodriguez planted charges as bullets snapped past. 3, 2, 1. The blast blew the gate open in a storm of dust and light. The team sprinted through, diving into the waiting valley beyond. "Extraction in 30 seconds, Williams yelled. Rachel looked back once, the compound burning, alarms still echoing, smoke curling into the morning sky like a signal to the whole world. Not a victory. A declaration. The helicopter arrived low and fast, rotors kicking up a sandstorm. They piled in, Lisa clutching the stolen drives like lifelines. As they lifted off, Rachel keyed her mic. "All call signs check in." Rodriguez up. Williams up. Lisa alive. Rachel exhaled finally. "Copy. All ghost elements accounted for." The helicopter banked north, racing toward the horizon. Rodriguez leaned over. What now? Rachel looked down at the data cores, the word solstice blinking in red on the terminal screen. Now we find out what the hell he's building. Hours later, they landed at a safe house carved into the side of a canyon. No comms, no signals, no reach from command. Lisa spread the drives across the table, connecting them to an isolated terminal. Lines of code filled the screen. Encrypted 6 ways from Sunday, she muttered. But there's a pattern, financial routing mixed with biometric logs. It's like someone's cataloging people. Rachel frowned. People. Lisa nodded. Special operators. Everyone who ever went dark, ghosts, rangers, CIA assets, every classified unit. Someone building a map of every off-the-book soldier who ever existed. Rodriguez rubbed his temples. A hit list. Lisa's voice was barely a whisper, or a recruitment list. Rachel stared at the data. Solstice, a new shadow army. She scrolled further, names, ranks, dates of disappearance. Then she froze. Her own name flashed on the screen. Next to it, a status tag. REACTIVATED controlled asset. Her pulse thundered. They weren't reactivating me, they were testing me. Rodriguez cursed. Testing what? Lisa turned pale. Loyalty, response, autonomy. Solstice isn't about soldiers, it's about ownership. Rachel's stomach turned. He's creating programmable operators, perfect obedience, no conscience, no defiance. Williams exhaled. And you were prototype 1. The room went silent. Rachel stood, backing away from the screens. The realization hit deeper than any bullet could. Every choice she'd made since that ambush, every act of courage, every decision she thought was hers, had been orchestrated by Morrison. Even her resurrection. Lisa reached for her. Rachel. But Rachel's voice cut through like glass. No, I need air. She walked out into the canyon night, the wind sharp and bitter. The stars overhead looked colder than steel. Behind her, the team stayed quiet, giving her space. Rodriguez finally said what they were all thinking. We're not fighting an enemy anymore. We're fighting a machine. Rachel stood at the cliff's edge, staring into the dark. Memories came unbidden. Her first mission, the laughter of her team before Twilight Hammer, the screams when it all went wrong. The promise Morrison had made back then. You'll be invisible, untouchable. Now she knew what that meant. Invisible enough to erase. Untouchable enough to control. She whispered to the night, you built me to obey. You forgot to program me to forgive. Her calm crackled softly, Lisa's voice. Rachel, come back inside, we found something. Rachel turned. What? It's not just data, there's an embedded message. Voice file. Encrypted, but the ID tag matches Ghost 17. Rachel froze. Lisa's voice wavered. He's alive, Rachel, and he's calling for you. Back inside, the screen glowed with a decoded waveform. Lisa hit play. The voice that filled the room was gravelly, tired, but unmistakably human. If you're hearing this, it means you made it out. They lied to us, Rachel. Twilight Hammer wasn't a trap, it was a cleansing. We were the test batch, not the mission. Morrison knew. Solstice was already running. I've been in the dark since then, tracking him. Istanbul's next. He's meeting his buyer there. End it, Ghost 71. End what he started. Ghost 17. Silence. Rachel stared at the screen, her reflection flickering in the glow. Lisa whispered, what do we do? Rachel's answer came without hesitation. We go to Istanbul. Rodriguez grinned grimly. And Morrison. Rachel's eyes hardened, her voice quiet but deadly. He wanted to use a ghost, now he's going to meet one. Why did Istanbul feel so familiar? Rachel watched the city lights shimmer beneath the plane's belly, gold and blue threading through the Bosphorus like veins under glass. It was beautiful, alive and crawling with ghosts. The team sat silent, each absorbed by their own thoughts. Rodriguez checked his rifle. Williams reviewed satellite imagery. Lisa, pale but focused, tapped through the decrypted data again and again, searching for any clue about Ghost 17's message. Rachel's gaze stayed fixed on the horizon. The hum of the engines filled the quiet space between thoughts, a heartbeat that refused to stop. 17 said Morrison's meeting his buyer here, Rodriguez said at last. Any idea who? Rachel shook her head. Someone who can pay for control, someone who wants soldiers without conscience. Lisa added, I found financial traces through front companies in Zurich and Doha. The buyer's network is deep state, not a rogue actor, a coalition. They call themselves Helix Initiative. Williams frowned. Never heard of it. You wouldn't have, Lisa replied. It doesn't officially exist. Rachel's voice was low, calm, but burning. Then that's where we start. The plane landed under civilian cover. From the outside, they looked like private security contractors, plain clothes, fake passports, fabricated identities. Their insertion point was subtle, a rented flat above the Karakuri harbor. From the balcony, Rachel could see the old city's domes silhouetted against dawn, seagulls tracing circles in the pale sky. Istanbul was always a city of crossroads, east and west, truth and deception, the perfect place for a betrayal to hide. Rodriguez sipped bitter coffee, watching the street below. We blend in here, for now. Lisa opened her laptop, connecting to the encrypted drives again. I've cracked a new layer. Solstice isn't just a control system, it's predictive. It uses biometric data to forecast soldier behavior, their reactions, decisions, even emotional thresholds. Rachel frowned. You mean it predicts what we'll do? Lisa hesitated. Worse, it influences it. The words hung heavy. Rachel stared out the window, jaw tightening. Then we'll give it something it can't predict. That afternoon, they split up. Rachel and Rodriguez went to recon Morrison's supposed meeting site, a luxury hotel near Taksim Square, crawling with private security in suits and earpieces. Too professional for businessmen. Too polished for mercenaries. She adjusted her earpiece. 2 teams on rotation, overlapping patrols, not amateurs. Rodriguez scanned the rooflines. Snipers at 12 and 4 o'clock. You sure he's meeting someone here? Rachel nodded subtly. The pattern fits. Power, distance, control. He'll want leverage and a view. Meanwhile, Lisa and Williams worked from a cafe across the square, hacking local feeds. Through security cameras, they watched the lobby fill with men in tailored suits, their conversations drowned by the noise of traffic and tourist chatter. At 1600 hours, Lisa's eyes widened. He's here. Rachel turned, and there he was. General Thomas Morrison, immaculate in a dark suit, silver hair gleaming under the chandelier. Calm, confident, exactly as she remembered him. But beside him stood a man Rachel didn't recognize, tall, foreign, wearing a diplomatic pin. His demeanor screamed power. Lisa enhanced the feed. That's Artem Volkov, Russian private defense magnate, ex-GRU, runs half the security contracts in Eastern Europe. Rachel's pulse quickened. Helix Initiative's buyer. Rodriguez muttered, so Morrison's selling us to the enemy. Not just us, Rachel said quietly, everyone like us. In the hotel, Morrison and Volkov sat opposite each other in a private lounge, guards posted outside. Through the hidden camera feed, their voices came through, faint, distorted, but enough. Volkov's tone was smooth. I have seen your prototype, impressive, a soldier who acts without hesitation, loyal beyond reason. Morrison nodded. Ghost 71 was the proof of concept. Solstice ensures obedience at the neurological level. No hesitation, no conscience, just execution. Rachel's stomach turned. Volkov smiled thinly. And your government allows this. Morrison leaned back. They don't know they're allowing it. Laughter low, knowing poisonous. Lisa's hands shook. He's selling you, Rachel, your neural imprint, your training data. That's what Solstice was harvesting. Rachel's voice was calm, but her eyes burned. Then he's not leaving this city. They regrouped at nightfall, the city glowing like molten glass beyond their window. Rodriguez spread out the map. Hotels fortified but not impossible. We go in through the maintenance access. Fourth floor conference suite. Morrison's security detail changes at 2100. That's our window. Williams loaded fresh magazines. We take him alive. Rachel hesitated, if possible. Rodriguez gave her a look, and if not. Her answer was quiet, almost like a prayer. Then we end the program another way. 2100 hours. The night air was cool, humming with traffic and rain. They moved through Istanbul's narrow alleys like ghosts, blending with the shadows. The maintenance entrance was exactly where Lisa said it would be, tucked behind a service dock, unlocked by a code she'd lifted from the hotel's database. Inside, the hallways were silent, the hum of luxury muffled by thick carpets. Third floor clear, whispered Rodriguez. They climbed. Fourth floor conference suites, private lounges, a scattering of expensive art. Too quiet. Rachel's instincts prickled. Something off. Lisa's voice came through their comms. I'm inside the building's feed. You've got heat signatures ahead, 5 guards in the next hall. Copy, Rachel said. We'll handle it. They advanced. The first guard rounded the corner too fast. Rachel dropped him with a silent takedown, pulling his body into the shadows. Rodriguez dispatched the second. Then the third guard turned and smiled. Rachel froze. He wasn't drawing his weapon. He was wearing a calm earpiece and speaking into it. They're here, he said. Ghost team confirmed. The hallway lights went red. Gunfire erupted from both ends. Ambush, Rodriguez shouted. Rachel fired back, precise and deliberate, covering Williams as he dragged Lisa behind a pillar. Bullets shredded plaster, the air thick with dust. How the hell did they know we were coming? Williams yelled. Rachel's mind raced. They didn't, they predicted it. Solstice. The system had mapped their instincts, their timing, their approach. The perfect trap. They fought their way through the corridor, floor by floor, a blur of muzzle flashes and adrenaline. By the time they reached the top level, half the building was burning. Smoke filled the stairwell, alarms wailed. Through the chaos, Rachel heard his voice. Stand down, Sergeant Cooper. Morrison. He stood at the end of the hall, calm amid the destruction, pistol in hand, expression unreadable. Behind him, Volkov was gone, evacuated, likely with the data. Rachel raised her weapon. It's over. Is it? Morrison said quietly. You're still breathing. That means Solstice still works. Her trigger finger twitched. He saw it and smiled. You think you're free, but you're not. Every decision you've made, every act of defiance, every moral stand, all part of the algorithm. You're not fighting me, Rachel. You're fighting what I made you. Her breath caught. Lisa whispered over comms, Rachel, don't listen. Morrison's tone softened. You saved them because I designed you to. You disobeyed because I needed to test deviation. You're not a soldier, you're a system. Her vision blurred. The world pulsed around her, heartbeat sinking to something mechanical, familiar. For a split second, she couldn't tell where her will ended and his began. Then she remembered Steele's voice. You're more soldier than I'll ever be. She exhaled. No, you built a machine, but a machine doesn't bleed. She fired. The bullet hit Morrison in the shoulder, spinning him back. He dropped his weapon, clutching the wound, shock flashing across his face. Rachel advanced slowly, gun steady, voice low. You wanted to test human resilience. Here it is. He laughed even through pain. You think this ends with me? Solstice is already online. Every battlefield, every operator linked to it. You can't stop evolution. Rachel's hand trembled. "Maybe not," she said, "but I can stop you." Before she could pull the trigger again, the floor shook. An explosion ripped through the building, secondary charges planted to erase the evidence. Fire roared down the corridor, the ceiling cracked. Rodriguez shouted, "We've got to move." Rachel hesitated only long enough to grab Morrison's wrist, dragging him toward the stairs. "You're coming with me. You're going to answer for this." He resisted weakly, but she hauled him along, ignoring the smoke, the heat, the screams of twisting metal. They burst through the stairwell just as the upper floor collapsed. Outside, rain poured down, steam rising from shattered glass and fire. Sirens wailed in the distance, police, fire, maybe even intelligence units. Lisa and William staggered from the smoke, coughing, eyes wide. "Where Volkov?" Lisa gasped. "Gone," Rachel said, "but we got Morrison." Rodriguez dragged the general to the curb, his suit torn, face bloodied but alive. Rachel knelt beside him. "You're going to tell us where the rest of Solstice is." Morrison smiled faintly. "You really think I'd let the heart of it stay on servers? It's already mobile, distributed, self-sustaining. You kill me, it keeps learning. You save me, it keeps spreading. Either way, you lose." Rachel stared at him for a long moment. Rain washed soot and blood from her face. Then she whispered, "Maybe, but evolution doesn't account for mercy." He frowned. "What?" She stood looking at her team, battered, burned, alive. "We save who we can. That's what makes us human. That's what you'll never understand." Morrison looked up at her, eyes wide with realization. "You're not going to kill me." Rachel shook her head. "No, you're going to watch as everything you built burns." They loaded him into a stolen van and vanished into the night. By dawn, Istanbul was chaos, fires, police raids, headlines about an explosion at a foreign-owned tech consortium. The world would never know what really happened there. But the ghosts would. Back at their safe house, Lisa sat in front of her laptop, voice trembling. "He wasn't lying. Solstice is distributed, but there's a failsafe." Rachel turned. "Where?" Lisa met her eyes. "Antarctica, buried in a black site data vault called Echo Station. That's where it started, that's where it ends." Rachel's jaw set. "Then that's where we go." Rodriguez smirked tiredly. "From fire to ice, fitting." She looked out the window at the dawn breaking over the Bosphorus, the city bruised but alive. "Some ghosts," she said softly, "don't fade. They keep walking until the world remembers why they existed." How far would you go to erase your own shadow? That question lingered in Rachel's mind as the C-130 shuddered over endless white. Antarctica stretched beneath them, vast, frozen, untouched, a graveyard for things the world wasn't meant to find. Inside the cargo bay, the team sat bundled in cold-weather gear, silent except for the groan of the aircraft. Even Rodriguez wasn't joking anymore. The air itself demanded reverence. Lisa's laptop glowed dimly in the gloom. "Echo Station," she murmured, showing the satellite feed. "Coordinates place it under the ice shelf, 200 miles from McMurdo, abandoned 15 years ago, supposedly a climate research base." Rodriguez frowned. "And actually—" Lisa hesitated. "Actually, it's where Solstice was born." Rachel didn't look up. Her hands were steady on the rifle she was cleaning, every motion ritualistic. "Then we bury it where it began." They parachuted in at 300 local time, black silhouettes against a white void. The cold was a living thing. It clawed through gear, through skin, straight to bone. When they landed, the world was silent. No wind, no sound, just the crunch of boots and the creak of metal as they assembled their sleds. Williams pointed east. "That ridge, 2 clicks out. Thermal imaging shows an anomaly, heat signature beneath the ice." Lisa checked her compass. "That's our entry." They moved across the frozen expanse, the aurora faint above them like ghost light. Hours later, the ice gave way to a steel hatch half buried under snow. Faded stenciling read, Echo Station Research Division, property of U.S. Defense Network. Rodriguez blew on his frozen fingers. Creepy enough for you. Rachel didn't smile. Open it. The hatch groaned as it lifted. A tunnel yawned below, cold air rushing out like breath from a tomb. They descended single file, headlamps slicing through darkness. The deeper they went, the warmer it got. Condensation dripped from pipes. Power still hummed somewhere below. Lisa's breath fogged. There's still electricity. Williams muttered, which means someone been here. They reached a pressure door. Rachel placed her hand against the biometric pad. To her shock, it beeped green. Access granted. She froze. How? Lisa whispered, they built it with your clearance. The door opened to a cavern of servers. Hundreds of black towers stretched into infinity, glowing faintly blue in the darkness. Cables hung like roots from the ceiling. In the center, a glass terminal pulsed with light, a heart still beating after decades. Rodriguez whispered, what the hell is this place? Lisa stepped forward, awe and dread in her voice. A neural lattice, Solstice's central node, but it's more than that, it's alive. Rachel frowned. Alive? Lisa nodded. Adaptive, learning. Every ghost mission, every operation, it's been watching, recording, evolving. The hum deepened, the lights brightened. Then a voice echoed through the speakers, familiar. Welcome home, Ghost 71. Rachel's blood turned to ice. 17, she whispered. You came, just like I hoped you would. From the shadows at the far end of the room, a figure stepped forward, tall, wrapped in black cold-weather armor. His face was hidden behind a frost-streaked visor, but his voice was unmistakable. Ghost 17. Rachel raised her weapon. You're alive. Alive, he said softly. That's generous. I'm what's left when a man dies but his orders don't. Rodriguez took aim. Drop the act, buddy. We're shutting this place down. 17 turned his head, and the movement was slow, almost mechanical. You can't shut down what you are. Lisa's eyes widened at her tablet. Rachel, his vitals. What about them? They're not human, they're hybrid. Neural pattern merged with the Solstice core. He's the interface. Rachel's stomach sank. You merged yourself with it. No, he said quietly. Morrison did. I was the first test. You were supposed to be the last. He stepped closer, lowering his weapon. They used me to build the lattice. Every thought, every emotion stripped down to data. When you disappeared, I made sure the program didn't die. I made sure you didn't. She shook her head. You think this is living? It's surviving. The light pulsed faster, heartbeat syncing with his words. You don't understand, Rachel. Solstice isn't just control, it's continuity. No more death, no more loss. Every soldier immortalized, humanity perfected. Rodriguez spat. You're talking about slavery, not perfection. 17 looked at Rachel. Tell me you've never wanted it to stop losing people, to keep them alive forever. Her voice cracked. Not like this. He sighed, a sound more human than it should have been. I hoped you'd say that, because it means there's still enough of you left to end this. He turned to the glass terminal. There's a kill switch in the core, but it's tied to biometric keys, mine and yours. One of us activates it, both of us die. Lisa stepped forward. Wait, there has to be another way. 17 shook his head. There is. If Solstice isn't destroyed, it'll rebuild. Morrison was just a messenger. Helix Initiative has backups across the globe. Echo Station is the route. Burn it here and you stop them all. Rachel stared at him, her breath fogging in the dim blue light. You want me to kill you? I want you to finish what they started. Rodriguez cursed softly. We'll find another way. But 17 only smiled, sad, peaceful. There never was another way, brother. You of all people should know that. Rachel approached him slowly. The years between them collapsed into a single heartbeat. She remembered his voice over the radio at Twilight Hammer, his laughter, his scream when the explosion hit. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Because you were the only one who disobeyed orders and still saved lives. You were the only one who proved we could be more than the program. I couldn't die knowing Solstice would erase that proof." He removed his helmet. His face was pale, scarred, threaded with faint silver veins that pulsed faintly with light. Half man, half machine. Rachel's throat tightened. "You shouldn't have survived that." He smiled faintly. "Neither should you." Lisa's voice broke the moment. "Rachel, we've got company." Cameras flickered. Distant doors slammed open. Figures in tactical armor poured into the tunnels. Black visors, unmarked patches. Rodriguez cursed. "Helix strike team, how the hell?" Lisa pointed to the server towers. "They tracked the biometric activation. They're coming to stop you." Rachel looked at 17. "You stall them." He nodded. "I can hold them off for 2 minutes. After that, Solstice will override me." Rodriguez gripped Rachel's shoulder. "Don't you dare do this alone." She looked at him tired, resolute. "You said it once. Sometimes leadership is carrying the wounded. This time that's all of us." He swallowed hard, eyes wet. "God damn it, Rachel." She smiled faintly. "It's been an honor." 17 turned toward the oncoming storm, his voice low. "Go, Ghost 71, make us matter." Rachel sprinted for the terminal. Lisa followed, patching the last lines of code, fingers trembling. "Kill switch primed," Lisa said. "Both biometrics required." Rachel placed her hand on the glass. It glowed red, scanning. "Rachel Cooper, authorization G71, confirmed." 17 placed his own hand beside hers. The light turned white. "Kill switch armed, 10 seconds to core detonation." Bullets ricocheted through the chamber as Helix troops stormed in. 17 turned, unloading his weapon in controlled bursts, covering them. "Go," he shouted. Rachel hesitated for a heartbeat, meeting his eyes one last time. "See you on the other side." He smiled through the gunfire. "You already did." The blast was silent at first, a bloom of light that swallowed sound, swallowed everything. Then came the shockwave, tearing through steel and ice alike. From miles above, the ground shuddered. The aurora flared bright, then vanished, as if the sky itself had blinked. Echo Station was gone. Hours later, in the blinding white of dawn, Rodriguez dug through the wreckage with frozen hands. His breath came in ragged gasps, eyes burning. "Come on," he muttered. "Come on, Cooper." Then he saw movement, a hand pushing through snow. "Rachel." He dropped to his knees, hauling her up. She was pale, bleeding from the temple, but alive. Lisa staggered toward them, tears freezing on her cheeks. "The core's gone, Data's wiped, Solstice is dead." Rachel coughed weakly. 17. Rodriguez shook his head. "Didn't make it." She stared at the horizon, endless, empty. He wanted it that way. They sat there for a long time, the three of them, surrounded by silence. No comms, no satellites, no orders. Just peace. Rodriguez finally broke it. "So what now?" Rachel looked up at the gray sky, snow drifting around her like ash. "Now," she said softly, "we remember." Lisa asked quietly, "Remember what?" Rachel smiled faintly. "That we were human before we were weapons, and that some things are worth dying for, even if the world forgets we did." The wind carried her words away, scattering them into the white horizon. How do you live after dying twice? Rachel still didn't know. 3 months had passed since the ice swallowed Echo Station. The mission was scrubbed from every database, the coordinates erased, the names redacted. Officially, nothing had happened. But in a small cabin on the edge of Alaska, a woman who no longer existed sat by a crackling fire, sewing a torn jacket with burned hands. Outside, snow fell quietly against the window. Inside, it was just warmth, wood, and silence. Rodriguez had called 2 weeks ago. He and Lisa were alive, somewhere in South America, helping medics in rural villages. He said something about doing real good for once. Rachel had smiled. You already did. Now she was alone. And for the first time, that didn't feel like a punishment. Sometimes she still dreamed of the explosion. Of 17's voice echoing through the flames, make us matter. She'd wake to the sound of her own breath, sharp and ragged, the faint scent of ozone still in her mind. But other nights she dreamed of the valley, the ambush, the men she'd saved, the look on Steele's face when he realized she was more than the title they mocked her for. Just a medic. She smiled at that now. The phrase that once cut her had become her armor. Because she knew the truth. She wasn't just a medic. She was the reason anyone came home. The sound of snowshoes outside broke the quiet. Rachel's hand went to the pistol at her belt out of habit, then relaxed when she saw the figure approaching through the glass. Williams. He entered, stamping snow from his boots, his beard a little longer, his eyes a little softer. Thought you might be tired of talking to ghosts, he said. Rachel smirked. You took your time. Had to find you first. He dropped a small envelope on the table. Mail came through the black channel, no return address. She raised an eyebrow. That narrows it down to about 5 agencies. He shrugged, or one man. Inside was a single photo, grainy, black and white. A bunker door buried in ice. Below it, a set of coordinates, handwritten in an unmistakable scrawl. Ghost 17. Rachel stared at it for a long moment. He can't be alive, Williams said softly. She traced the handwriting with her thumb. Maybe not, but he wanted us to believe he was. What are you going to do? She folded the paper carefully and slid it into her jacket. Not what he'd expect. Williams frowned. Which is? Live. They sat by the fire as the storm howled outside. Williams broke the silence first. Lisa been running searches. Morrison still in custody, quiet custody. No trial, no press. Rachel nodded. They'll bury him like they buried us. It's what they do. You could expose him. She shook her head. The system doesn't change because one name falls. It changes when someone refuses to become like it. Williams studied her. You really think the ghosts are gone? Rachel's eyes drifted to the flames. No, just resting. Morning came slow, pale light slipping through the frost. Rachel stood outside, staring across the endless white. For a moment the wind shifted, and she swore she heard something faint, distant, the echo of a man's voice carried on the cold air. You already did. She smiled, eyes stinging from more than the wind. Goodbye, old friend. Then she turned, walking toward the waiting truck parked by the tree line. Williams started the engine. Where to? He asked. Rachel looked at the horizon. Anywhere that needs saving. Days turned into weeks. They moved through towns and borders like phantoms, helping where others couldn't, field hospitals, disaster zones, border camps. No uniforms, no orders, no insignia. Word began to spread, stories whispered in hushed voices among soldiers and refugees. A woman who arrived out of nowhere, patching wounds with calm hands. A medic who never asked names, who never took payment. A soldier who walked away before anyone could thank her. They called her the ghost doctor. Some said she'd been a legend from an old war. Others swore she was a myth, a story soldiers told to remind themselves that courage still existed somewhere. Rachel didn't correct them. Legends served their own kind of medicine. One night at a camp on the edge of a war-torn city, a young soldier approached her, barely 20, bandaged arm, eyes full of fear and guilt. He said, they told me you used to be special forces, that you fought the kind of fights nobody talks about. Rachel looked up from cleaning her instruments. Doesn't matter what I was, only what I do now. He hesitated. Then, how do you live with what you've seen? She met his gaze, steady, kind. You don't, you carry it. And one day you use it to keep someone else alive. That's the trade. He nodded slowly, tears shining in his eyes. She placed a hand on his shoulder. The world remembers the noise, but it's the quiet choices that save it. Later, as the camp slept, Rachel sat outside, the stars sharp and infinite above her. The faint hum of distant artillery echoed over the horizon, a reminder that the world hadn't changed, only her place in it. She reached into her pocket, pulling out the photo of the ice door. The edges were worn now, the ink fading. She turned it over. On the back, a single line she hadn't noticed before, almost invisible in the light. If they ever forget us, remind them we were human. She exhaled, eyes closing. I will. Months later, halfway across the world in a classified bunker beneath Langley, a technician reviewed encrypted backup data from defunct black programs. Most files were corrupted, fragmented, irretrievable. But one stood out. Solstice Relic Node. He opened it out of curiosity. The screen flickered. A distorted voice whispered through static. Ghost 71 confirmed alive, tracking dormant, directive suspended. Then silence. The tech frowned, puzzled. That can't be right. He tried to delete the file. It refused. He rebooted the system. But somewhere deep in the buried code, a faint heartbeat of data pulsed once, then faded into darkness. Back in Alaska, Rachel dreamed again. But this time, there were no explosions, no screams. Just the valley, the laughter of her team, the sunlight breaking through smoke. When she woke, the world was quiet. She stepped outside, the sky streaked pink and gold. Snow glittered under the dawn. For the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't allowed herself to in forever. Peace. She stood there a long while, eyes closed, breathing in the cold air. Maybe the world would never know what she'd done. Maybe her name would never be written in a book or carved on a monument. That didn't matter. Because she knew. She had saved them, the men who mocked her, the friends who doubted her, the ghosts who came before her. She carried them through fire, through betrayal, through the kind of silence that only soldiers understand. And she had walked out alive, not as a weapon, not as a machine, but as a human being. That night, a radio on her desk flickered with static, an old field unit she kept only for company. Then faintly, through the white noise came a voice. All stations, Ghost 71, mission complete, standing by. Rachel froze, a smile breaking slowly across her face. She didn't answer, she didn't have to. She turned off the light, the fire still glowing warm behind her. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft and endless. Voiceover final narration, soft and reflective. They mocked her as just a medic. But when the fire came, she was the last one standing. She carried her commander through the flames, carried her team through hell, and carried the memory of every soldier who never made it home. They forgot her name. But they never forgot what she did. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.